I always knew that I was going to start something someday. But there's only one condition that I put to it. Is that when I start that company, it has to be for global from day one. It cannot be only for Southeast Asian or only for Singaporeans. It cannot be. If that happens, if anyone comes to me with that, I'm going to walk away. If I were to start a company, it has to be for humanity. It has to be for the civilization. It cannot just be for like Asians or like for Southeast Asians or
That
whatever.
constricts you in your strategy, your
Yep.
tactics, the culture you set,
All the way.
the people you, everything.
Everything. Exactly why today ADPList is perceived as a global platform. You know, most of our users are from the US. I'm not even in the US. But it's the intention, the manifestation of the intention that says I will only do it if it's like that. That is the powerful part, right? Like to me, that is the most intentional part, that really led me to ADPList. It, in fact, like because of that, it led me to decide to commit myself full time to ADPList eventually. Yeah.
Fractional is the show for world-class consultants in AI, design, software engineering, and product. Felix is the co-founder and CEO of ADPList, the world's go-to platform for high-quality, trusted mentorship. Mentors are from companies like Netflix, Airbnb, and Google. It hosts over 100 million minutes of sessions on topics such as product design, product management, and coding in 140 plus countries. He's also a Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia List awardee and a Tatler's Generation T Future Leader List awardee in 2023. ADPList has raised $1.3 million from Sequoia Capital India and Goodwater Capital. In this episode, we discuss Felix's transformative journey in Silicon Valley, having global ambition, how designers can level up to become founders, and a lot more. This is Alexis, your co-founder from Swarm. Please enjoy the episode.
Hey Felix, finally great to meet you in person. It's been such a long time, but I am so happy that we finally met. Welcome to Fractional.
Yeah, thanks for having me at Fractional, and thanks for booking this amazing venue. I love it.
Okay, we are at the Hive Studios, very branded.
Yeah, it feels amazing. So I'm all good. So thanks for having me.
So Felix, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm born and raised here in Singapore. I was born in 1997, in the time where Singapore was experiencing a rapid growth of economy, and as a kid growing up, I obviously enjoyed the stable economy of Singapore and just living with my grandparents as well as my parents, and so I'm a typical Singaporean, everyday man.
What is
on
a
the streets.
typical Singaporean?
It's you go to school, you come back, you spend time with your family, and that's it. And so but I right now today I'm the co-founder and CEO of ADPList, and we're on a mission to help every person unlock their human potential. And we do that by bringing shared knowledge and inspirations to the world. And we provide a platform that basically allow mentorship to happen through a one-to-one video call. We started that about 3 years ago. It's been a big part of my life. I'm also a designer. I used to be a professional athlete. I went through the military for 2 years. So it's been quite a life. So that's a little bit about me.
You're like superhuman to me. Like,
Yeah.
and you're 26. I'm 28. Like,
Yeah.
you're a big inspiration, man.
Try my best, man.
And you're also like a Forbes 30 Under 30 awardee. So
Yeah.
all props to you.
Thank
very,
you.
very, very inspirational. I'm sure a lot of people would love to learn from you. And actually, a lot of the questions I would ask would delve into the design founder aspect of things.
Yeah.
How did you get into this state where you have 25,000 plus mentors
Yeah.
on ADPList with a global footprint? Like,
Yeah.
what characteristics do you need to have as a founder to get there?
Wow.
Build community on that scale.
I think there is there's 3 things that I look for personally, but also when I hire. And the first thing is high intelligence, right? And high intelligence, it means that you have to have a level of curiosity that makes you mildly, or if not severely, obsessive with the things that you're doing. So if you kind of look at my content, I'm not a content writer, but I'm obsessed with those things. And so intellectual intelligence really means being very curious about something, and going full on at it and being obsessed. That's the number one thing that I believe, the people we hire should have, that I should have. The second thing that we look for, that I personally think that is an important attribute, is high energy. And high energy means that, when you meet someone, you gotta have that level of energy where it almost feels like a kid just comes home from school telling their parents what they have learned today. That level of enthusiasm is exactly what I think is necessary to thrive. It's a show of passion, and that to me is the second factor, which is high energy. The last one is high integrity, right? High integrity means that someone's got to have a level of integrity to themselves, to the team, and to the world, and I think that's so important. It's not talked about. Also, integrity creates ownership, right? And so it's always it's a value that I hold very dear when we look at hiring. So yeah, three things: high intelligence, high energy, and high integrity.
These are essential values as a startup founder, and you yourself, right? Like, behave in a way that encapsulates these characteristics, right? Like, I could tell because you handle like your newsletter, right? On Substack for ADPList. Like, tell us about that. Like, what's the story of that?
It's fortunately and unfortunately case. Fortunately, I write. I love writing. Unfortunately, I'm the only person in the teams that love writing, and so I have to be the one dealing it. Obviously, now we're hiring a marketing lead to hopefully take over, but as we talked about before this podcast, that's a tough hire because of the contextual nature of the writing as well. You got to have some level of domain understanding. But Substack for me happened, really because I was inspired, I think, by a couple of newsletters that I read, right? I think one, Lenny's newsletter, second, the Generalist, and then I think there's quite a few as well that really inspired me to say, like Morning Brew as well. But that's one of the first newsletters I subscribed. So there's quite a few newsletters that I thought, wow, it was a great experience to be able to read something short, get to the point and inspire you to take action, right? And learn that. So that was when I got into writing. And I felt like, oh, this was something that I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed doing the research, learning something from that process, and then putting it on paper so that everyone else can learn from what I learned in that process. So, that took me about a month to kind of get used to it, and then everything just flows from there.
And you're an action-focused person. You're literally like a Forbes 30 under 30, awardee. You bring on these very, very influential people like Don Norman, Judy Zhu into your podcast, and you organize a conference of very prominent people, like 100 plus speakers. What kinds of strategies should designers in general employ to be able to do these kinds of things? Because as you said earlier during our conversation before this, it's not that straightforward. It's not about textbooks in the real world. I think you said that in one of your episodes, right?
Yeah.
What's your advice now that AI is coming in, coming for everyone's jobs?
Yeah.
How do we as designers become more strategic with our moves?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question, especially when we talk about AI. Because I've been hanging out with a lot of founders in AI as well, and not because I am in the space, but because I'm just, a curious learner, right? And so there's this quote that I love that is, that I think is by, Charles Darwin, or along those lines, is that, it's not the strongest that survive, it's not the fittest that survive, it's the most adaptable people that survive, or the most adaptable species that survive, right? And I think humans have been able to survive for so long really because of our adaptability to the surroundings, the change, the culture, whatever, the technology. And so AI is not new in the sense that from a change perspective, it is a change, right? It is a new change that we have to adapt to. I mean, my advice is really to look at sort of where do you look at AI sort of replacing or taking over in that sense, but also where AI cannot add value, right? For example, there are things like originality that AI, cannot come up with because data is fed with historical data, right?
It's like your personal taste.
Yeah, like your personal taste. And what I look at AI and humans is that I look at humans as the last mile creativity and last mile delivery. And here's what I mean. This is actually the first time I'm saying that. So AI would, my prediction is that AI would end up producing like things that are really, really good at a 90% sort of hit rate, right? So for the first 90% of a creativity journey or like a delivery journey, AI would be able to do everything. You want to do user interview, you want to do personas, whatever, AI is going to cover the first 90% all the way up to even prototyping.
Even if Figma got flack for it,
yeah, exactly.
It's going to happen at some point.
It's going to happen. And so it's the last 10% before it ships to everyone else. That's where human comes in, because that's where taste comes in. That's where perspective comes in. That's where, experiences and insights comes in. That last 10% is where humans thrive. And I think you want to focus on where your 10% can be when you deliver that value, because the 90% AI is going to do it. The AI might not do a lot of things right now today, but for sure in the near future, in the next 2 to 3 years, they are going to take up like 90% of the front-facing stuff, and you have to start figuring out what is your 10%.
Dude, you're such an accomplished designer and a founder too. Like, can you tell us a little bit about what you feel like your strengths are, just to illustrate one path for designers to see, right?
Wow. Strength from a technical perspective, or just
like
in general?
In general, like
Wow.
I hear you say you're very curious.
Yeah, right.
That plays to your strengths, and that enables you to interact with people in a certain way. What do you feel like some of your strengths?
The number one thing is the drive and the obsession over, the drive and the obsession over what I'm doing and the task that I'm placed, and the things that I choose to do, right? There's a lot of, sometimes there's some competitions here and there in the things that you do, whether be it from a marketing perspective, or whether be it from a product, whatever perspective, like there's always competition. And for me, I thrive in that competition. I know that everyone is nervous. I know that when it comes to the clock ticking down, everyone is nervous. I'm nervous as well. But I'm more prepared for those moments, and I'm ready, and most people are not. And so being obsessed allows you to be prepared. And that's really kind of how I conduct my life and myself, which is that, there's this level of drive and obsession towards competition, but also like bettering yourself, that it almost feels like, you're always driving, and you don't sort of like burn out, because it is your passion. I think the reason why I love competing with people, and also, I used to be in competitive sports, and that's really because
Which sport?
Speed skating. Yeah,
Oh,
I used to compete for Team Singapore, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was on the national level for that. Been to like international Asian Games and Asian Games and whatnot. So throughout my life, I've always been, I think, excellent at the things that I choose to do, I want to thrive at that, because I thrive under pressure. I thrive under such competition, and that to me is a superhuman power, at least for myself, because that's where I believe that this is only born and this is only nurtured in a certain environment. And not everyone gets to be in that environment to say that I've competed against like China and whatever in sports, and to be in a room of the best athletes in your country. Not everyone has been there. And so to have that mentality and take it over to things like design and startups and anything else, I think it's a huge advantage. I mean, because you have tasted what it feels like to be the best of the best, and you know what it takes as well. You know the sacrifice that it's going to take, and so you kind of translate that to startups or whatever that you want to do. And I think that's my strength.
I got it. Like, I'm not a world-class athlete, but I think one of my strengths is surrounding myself with like world-class people. Like curating. If you're not born talented, like, you can nurture it, right?
You can nurture it.
Nurture. Yeah. And one way to pile on or compound your learnings, your growth as a person, and fundamentally change your attitude towards, handling startups or projects, initiatives, relationships, is just finding your council of people
Yeah.
that you rely on. Or sometimes it might not even have to be finding out about you. For example, Felix. Okay, Felix has done this A, B, C, and D. That sets the standard, right? Like it sets for a certain someone, it shows what's possible. It's up to you if you want to take up the challenge,
Yeah.
right? And do something about it. Inspiration is all around. The final action is up to you, right? Like,
Yeah.
what are you going to do about
What are you going
that?
to do about it? Yeah.
Yeah. You are still running ADPList. What's
Yeah.
top of mind for you, right? As the CEO,
Yeah.
as the founder.
I think building a sustainable company and an enduring business is important right now for me. We have raised from the top venture capital firms like Sequoia and Goodwater, and like it's always exciting to to have sort of a good backing of venture capital firms and to grow. But I think building a sustainable business and an enduring one is where the challenge is. And I want to take myself up for that challenge, starting from actually now we're in the midst of planning the next phase of strategy for ADPList that's going to hopefully last for 5 years or even a decade, right? Because if you've got a solid strategy, it's going to take some time to realize that dream towards that strategy. And, we're looking into that. But I think a big part of that discussion is all about building a sustainable business, being an enduring one. I think for far too long, there's maybe the clouds and the smokes from Silicon Valley that says that you got to lose a few $1 billion in order to be sustainable.
Like the blitz scaling.
Yeah, like the blitz
high
scaling
growth
part.
thing.
And I get that. I get why that happens. But we're not in an environment where that can happen as of today.
Yeah.
Right? Because
It's like winter.
yeah, it's a winter right now. So like if you're going to not adapt to winter and you're just going to be like, I'm going to blitz my way because that's what Reid Hoffman say on his book of blitz scaling, then that's problematic, right? Because you don't adapt. Now you're trying to be the fittest, the strongest, but then it's winter. It's winter, you got to get fire, you got to get woods, and you just need to survive this. And for me, the focus is to survive this, come out, emerge as the winner that has already laid the foundation, that has laid a good foundation, build a good team during this time. When you come out, when the market consolidates, when the market gets better, the next bull run, we can stand to benefit from that. And it's going to be a long-term game. It's going to be all about patience. It's going to be all about how much pain and suffering you can take. And I think that's part of the journey. So that is top of mind for me, right? Which is, what is a strategy that's going to get us over the next 5 years, right? To be a sustainable business. Now, how we want to do that, frankly, we're still in the midst of planning. So there's no how yet. But then that is the goal that we are going for.
That's so important. One thing Dexter and I talk about, Dexter's my co-founder and CEO of Swarm, is being sort of like a small giant. It's like the opposite of, blitzscaling being a hyper growth company, and focusing on fundamentals, right? Like getting revenue, making sure you have the resources to keep your company going. And honestly, it's very tough, right? Like, as a founder, like you have to experiment so much. You have to take into account company culture. You have to execute really well. As you said, right? You're dealing with so much pressure on top of a macro situation that's like weighing you down. Like what's your take on that? Like just handling everything.
Well, my take on that is that I don't have to change the world overnight. I don't have to change the world in the next 2 to 3 years or 5 years. I think a lot of founders are very impatient. Especially if you look at the one in the US, like it's very clear to me. So I don't have to change the world overnight. I can change it over the next course of next 30 years, 50 years of my life. And it doesn't have to be just one company, right? It can be several companies that adds up to the change that you want to see in the world. And so obviously each company has to add up to its own, but you have to be able to, I think, be patient. And so with so many things happening with the market and, the hiring, the culture, the scale, fundraising, whatever, the thing that I tell myself is, when I wake up every day, is focus. One thing at a time. Because that brings the same level of obsession as well, which is back to the point where I shared, which is whenever you do something, you will need to do it to be the best. And not saying, I want to do it just to get it out of the way, right? And so when there's so many things going on, I think the reality is that you have to focus and prioritize, right? What is the most important thing today that I will do? It doesn't have to be 5 things. It could be, okay, today the newsletter is going out and I'm going to spend 4 hours writing a pretty damn good newsletter, or even 6 hours.
It shows, by the way.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so it's like something like that, right? Where it's like, you're like, I'm going to spend that time doing something really good, and that's that. And so it could be 1 or 2 things, right? And so like when there's so many things going on, I think focus is the keyword, and taking one step at a time, not trying to, just do something for the sake of doing something. And that's how I approach life as well. And that is actually, on the contrary, that is way faster than doing everything at once. Because when you do everything at once, things mess up, you got to go fix it again. It takes up more time. Yeah.
what I like about you, and it shows in the product and how you communicate to the outside world, and how you establish relationships, is I see you as an end-to-end systems thinker and executioner.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Killing people. Just joking.
Part of it.
I signed up recently as a mentor at ADPList, got a few calls in.
Yes.
And it's very cool. Like, as founder, you take in feedback. It's like the first email, like the first emails from you, welcoming people. There's like an onboarding checklist that's easy to consume.
Yep.
You have built in like growth loops. Like you're asking people to put it on their LinkedIn. I find that very fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Just wanted to call that out.
I mean, like, you guys are doing a great job as well. So thanks for being a part of ADPList as a mentor. I mean, you're also sharing your knowledge from what you learned from SWAM to the rest of the world. Perhaps you could find even good hires for your own team in the future.
Actually, you're the top designer mentor on your platform is our Hive lead.
Oh, wow.
Like Angela, maybe you met
Angela,
with,
yeah,
like,
I met her, yeah.
in
Wow,
Manila,
amazing.
so-
I met her in Manila. Wow. Yeah, so exactly, this, we're here as a very neutral party, and we're like, we just want to bring people together.
Yeah.
And that's the joy of it. That's the joy of our work daily. Yeah.
It's interesting because I think we have similar philosophies when it comes to community building. I think it's a core differentiator, honestly. This time around, like earlier before the podcast, we were like comparing Western attitudes to like Asian ones.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
we're quite relational
we are very relational as Asians. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what can you say about the differences? Like, what
Well,
are
I
your
think-
hot takes?
Wow, I mean, I have a lot of hot takes, but depends. I mean, if you are an Asian American, let's start from there. If you're an Asian first, right? Doesn't matter where you are. There are going to be some values that is going to be inherently you. Things like respect your elderlies, stay with your parents until you're married.
Thank you to my mom and,
Yeah.
and your
Yeah,
parents
my parents as well, and
for letting us stay in the house.
in the house for free. Shout out to my parents. And so things like taboo topics like sex, relationship, pregnancy, whatever, even all this kind of thing, like you don't talk about with your parents. It's a very harsh topic. You have to always be very welcoming to guests at your home. When they're there, you kind of like host them all the way. There are very, very, very inherently deep Asian values that we love, that is all grounded in relationship, right? That's all grounded people to people. Now, that is an advantage, but also a disadvantage at some point, because people tend to try to make people too happy as well. You kind of, get in your way to make people happy. Now, we talk about the Asian American, so we move a little bit to the West. Now we're at the East, right? The Asian Americans, I mean, let's say if you are the first, second, third gen even, like my observation is that you are still very close to the Asian values. Now, if you think about it, you probably meet some Filipinos that come back from the US or are in the US right now.
Diaspora coming back.
Diaspora, yeah, or like they are staying there right now. Like, you feel that they are just Filipinos. You don't feel that they are Filipino American. They speak Tagalog. They speak the same thing. I mean, like it feels very close because they were brought up in the same culture and the same heritage, even though they are living in America. So there's something, to be honest with you, that I'm very fascinated about, because as much as a lot of people could have been whitewashed, right? Could have been like westernized. They are not. They are not. If you look at Filipinos, I think it's one of the strongest bunch, where from a cultural perspective, they are universally the same. And I freaking love that. Right? And like Chinese, same. Right? Like someone in San Francisco or Seattle or whatever right now would be using WeChat to chat with their grandparents back in China, right? But they are the third gen. They are just talking to just, it's like a, and then Indians, oh my God, Indians are definitely, they keep to their roots, right? Like, so Indians, Chinese, Filipinos, and, Thai as well, like, you just take a walk down the streets of San Francisco and you talk to this Asian, like, it is the same exact value. You're not going to get anything different, right? So there's that. Now we talk about Americans. Like, let's say maybe the white Americans. Man, I think it's a totally different thing, right? Because I would say there are some overlaps in value, but in terms of the overall sentiment-wise, most of them, I'm generalizing and I could be wrong, is that, the sentiment is that it's always much more of like a transaction first rather than relationship. That there is a good thing that there's a good quote that my friend quoted to me about this, was that they are friendly but they are not friends, right? They are friendly but they are not friends, because a lot of people tend to misassociate that, especially when I was in the US, where they could smile at you, they could say, "Wow, my God, you look beautiful," you dress well today or whatever, or you smell good kind of thing. But those are friendly gestures. It doesn't go deep. There's no depth. That's what I'm referring to, right? There's no depth in this relationship because it's mostly surface. To sum it up, I think the Western values are very individual.
It's a very individualistic.
Individualistic.
Meritocratic.
Yeah.
Not a community-based.
Exactly. It's a very meritocratic, but very individual-based culture and society. Now, if you look at Asians, and a big part of Southeast Asia, APAC, Asians, it's a very collective, community-centered culture, family-centered culture. Like what you talk about, you guys might be going to San Francisco, and you like Dexter has a family there, potentially might be staying together or whatnot. This is exactly what I mean by, from an Asian value perspective, these are always the first thing that comes to your mind. Very deep, very deep family ties, yeah.
In Filipino, we have this thing called bayanihan.
Yeah.
That's a very collectivistic term to just describe everyone helps each other accomplish their thing.
In Singapore, we call that the kampong spirit.
Oh, okay.
Right? So we used to live in village, and these village are called kampong, right? And kampongs are basically houses and houses and houses, like village. And kampong spirit is saying that, it's a form of like supporting one another, right? If today you're out at work and, like your kid is alone at home, I'm going to invite your kid to my house because I know that you're at work. And I'm sure Filipinos does that 100%. Like different terms, but the values are exactly the same. And it's so fascinating because this happens and permeates throughout all Asians that I've met anywhere in the world. And I have no idea how it's sustained generations to generations, but it's just fascinating.
And it manifests in how we interact within business too, right?
Yeah.
Like how we run our companies, it influences or
Exactly.
biases who we hire.
Yeah.
Then like how we set the strategy
Yeah.
and how our own values incorporate into that.
Yeah. Sometimes the hard part is that because we're Asians, we're like brought up to be respectful and nice to people, it can be hard to take tough decisions. And I'm sure you experience or know that as well. Like if you want to let go of someone, you got to mince your word to the point where it doesn't feel like you're even letting go of them, kind of thing. Those are tough lessons that I have to learn. I mean, there are times where you absolutely have to be nice, but there are times where you have to say that I am nice, but I have to be nice in a different way, right? But it's like you have to be nice by letting them go because keeping them here is not good for them as well.
It's a kindness.
Yeah, it's a kindness, right? But I think because of the environment that we bring up in, these conversations can be very hard to have, right? And so for me, like it was a learning curve the past, 6-7 years of just being in my career I mean, those tough conversations are the ones that I grow the most from.
And this
Yeah.
is not your first rodeo too, right? Like, is
Yeah.
this your third company? Like, I think you sold.
Yeah, I sold my first
one.
company when right out of like polytechnic, which is like high school, junior college equivalent, not college. So like I sold my first company by the age of 20 with my brother. So this is like my second startup in a sense.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
You're a
Yeah.
2X.
2X
now.
founder, yeah.
10X designer.
10X designer, 10X marketing person, hopefully, and a 2X founder. Yeah, man, I don't even know. Like, I think I always knew that I was going to start something in life again after that first one. So what happened was that I sold that company, and I had to go to military service after that. And right after that, I actually did something even before the military service that I don't say, which is that I actually spent a month in Silicon Valley alone. I had no friends or family, by the way, so I booked a hostel. And imagine how cheap this hostel is, because I was a student and I couldn't afford much. I just graduated from high school, so like I was literally staying in a room with 2 other girls. Right? Like it's like a freaking
Your parents will be
yeah.
will frown on you.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like
Okay.
I have no friends there, right? This was like 2018. I had no friends in San Francisco. I knew nothing. I was no one, and I just went there, and I had to stay there with like 2 girls, and the rent was like $300 per month or something or whatever. Yeah. So it's like really just a it's just like a mattress. And so my goal was there after selling the first company was that I wanted to know, genuinely, I wanted to know what makes Silicon Valley so special, right? They have people like Steve Jobs, they have Apple, Google, WhatsApp, Instagram, Airbnb, Uber, Square, Twitter, whatever you name it. Like, they have people like Elon Musk, Tesla, kind of thing. So it's like, what makes them so good? Are they smarter than us? Are they richer than us to fund these ideas? Are they more talented than us, right? Are they more well connected than us? So I was there to explore my curiosity, right? Like, do I have to be here in the future if I want to be successful, to change the world? What do they have that I don't, right? Or the rest of us don't. And so I went there 30 days to explore that. And that was before my military service. So I had about a 6 months window before the military service. And so that's when I spent a month in San Francisco. Went there, boy, it was quite the journey. I met so many people every single day, random coffees, they were so willing to share. By the end of it, I came back to Singapore and I was crying. I was crying because I didn't want to go to the army. I knew exactly what I found. I'll tell you what I learned there. I think one thing that I think that, frankly, because I'm from Singapore and this is we're a very wealthy country in that sense. The government has done so well to put us up, so we're a wealthy country. We're also very well connected, right? So well connected, very rich. You have good talents here. You have smart, one of the highest IQ in the world. Are you not poised to be the next Silicon Valley? So why are you not there? And the point is that I think there's 2 things that I learned why we're not there, or why a lot of countries won't be. Because one, I think the concentration of talent there is insane, right? It's not a normal concentration like Singapore. The talent there is next level. They are all really the best at what they do. And the second thing is that makes them special is that they are all so open to sharing. So open to sharing. They could be a VP of growth at SurveyMonkey and they met a student like me that's just traveling there alone. No connections, no nothing. Like, it doesn't benefit him. He's like, sure, come to my office. And then like the head of design at Airbnb doesn't know me at all. I'm a student back then. Now he's a mentor on ADPList. So like he opened the Airbnb office for me to visit and tour me around and share with me the Airbnb story. And so they're talented and they're very open to sharing. And that is what makes them special. Now, the second thing, which I think is the biggest thing that I learned from there, is that they were willing to dream very, very big. Like a lot of people that I know in this part of the world.
Like risk averse?
Yeah, risk averse. But I think people are open to risk. But here's the problem. When they're open to risk, there's a condition to it, which is I'm okay to win small as long as I don't fail big. And this is a freaking problem that I absolutely, I would say, hate. Because when you have people who say, I'm willing to win small, I'm settling for $50 million company valuation, $500 million company valuation, as long as I'm okay, I'm winning, I don't have to risk it all to be the biggest. Why should I compete with Google when I have $100 million? Why should I be like Larry or Sergey if I have $100 million? I'm comfortable, right? I'm just winning. I don't have to go so big that I might risk it all. That's the problem. That's the problem why we do not have companies that are like that. We have Grab, but Grab isn't Google. That is a big difference. But we have Grab, but Grab isn't Uber. Uber tried to conquer Southeast Asia, tried to conquer China, in UAE, in everywhere, Europe. Has Grab done that? No. Grab is like Southeast Asia first. Arguably, we could say it's focus. But what are you trying to achieve there? Just capital gains? Or trying to change the world? I mean, I set out to change the world. So being in Southeast Asia doesn't make sense to me as a company, right? Like, being based here, great. But serving just Southeast Asian doesn't make sense to me. So there's this global ambition and this drive and this willingness to say, it's okay if I fail, but I will aim for the big dream. And this was something that I learned from Silicon Valley in that 1 month there. Came back, before I went to military, I told myself, and this is leading back to ADPList, is that I will start a company someday. I always knew that I was going to start something someday. But there's only one condition that I put to it. Is that when I start that company, it has to be for global from day one. It cannot be only for Southeast Asian or only for Singaporeans. It cannot be. If that happens, if anyone comes to me with that, I'm going to walk away. If I were to start a company, it has to be for humanity. It has to be for the civilization. It cannot just be for like Asians or like for Southeast Asians.
That
or whatever.
constricts you in your strategy, your tactics, the culture you set,
all the way,
the people you, everything.
Exactly why today ADPList is perceived as a global platform. You know, most of our users are from the US. I'm not even in the US, but it's the intention, the manifestation of the intention that says I will only do it if it's like that. That is the powerful part, right? Like to me, that is the most intentional part. That really led me to ADPList. It, in fact, like because of that, it led me to decide to commit myself full time to ADPList eventually. Yeah.
Asian founders in general, especially for novice founders, or it's like for me, it's my first time. I remember in my own mentality, the thought of wanting to settle, but I do have my own, as you may say, like immersions into Silicon Valley too, like as part of Stanford's Entrepreneurial Society. Awesome. Like I stayed there. I went to like Google too.
Yeah.
Toured like the IDEO office. Went to pitch like a startup idea to a panel of investors. Now it's the thought of wanting to be a global company serving global customers, not just sticking to the Philippines, not being perceived as just a Manila-based company, but we're a global company. What are you talking about? Like we serve everyone. Like
exactly.
Our talent comes from all parts of the world. Like the amount of service we provide is world class.
Yeah.
Right. And for you, like for your platform, it's like the level of mentorship here is world class. Where we have freaking Airbnb, heads of design,
Nvidia. Yeah. It's crazy. I agree with what you say. I mean, I love that you had this exposure because now, and also I love that you're working with Dexter, honestly. I mean, Dexter, I haven't met him in person, but his profile, everything, I mean, he's a great guy. And for your first rodeo, to be working with someone that experienced, it doesn't matter where this journey leads to. You just got to enjoy and learn that, because to have the opportunity to work and learn from someone like that, to me, I consider is one of the best privilege, especially at our age.
Of course.
I think the learning curve is just there. Take it, yeah.
Very, very cool and very, very inspiring. Thank you for sharing that very heartfelt.
No, of course, yeah. Like
journey, right?
It's an important part, because if we're successful, we stand to benefit humanity as a whole. We stand to benefit the world. That is so much more inspiring to me. And the second thing is that if we're successful, the story of ADPList becomes one of its own, right? One of its kind, in the sense that now you have proven that global success can come out from everywhere and anywhere. And that to me is important. It's important for Singapore to recognize that. It's important for Philippines to recognize that, right? That while we have people that are on the world stage, and that we should invest more in them, and this to me is the message that I want to send to the next generation, right? That, if we end up becoming so successful globally, I think the privilege of really that whole journey is to be able to tell that story, so that it inspires more people out of this side of the world to say, like, this is the place to grow. I can be from a poor family, I can be from a whatever family, and out of here I can do what he did. And that to me is important. That to me is the legacy I want to leave. And I tell this a lot to my partner. I said the legacy I want to leave is not to be the richest person. That to me is being able to fulfill, sort of send your kids to good school, whatever, and all those just the finances. But the true legacy that I really want to leave is to be able to tell that story. Is to be able to say that I have contributed, one, to humanity, and second, to be able to tell that story so that more kids can look at that and be inspired by it. And I say this because when Kobe Bryant passed on, I think in 2020, it affected me a big deal, because I'm a big basketball fan. I used to play a lot of basketball. I still do. And I know a lot of Filipinos play basketball, and you play badminton.
Yeah.
And it affected me a big deal because I look up to him. I got to understand him a lot more, unfortunately, after he passed on, right? And the thing is that when you see his passing and many others along the same level of greatness and legend, is that these people are myth and these people are legends, right? But the thing that when they passed on, no one talks about how rich they are. No one talks about them being a billionaire or whatever, or they win how many NBA championships. Those are mildly talked about. You know what was talked about when Kobe Bryant passed on? It was his Mamba mentality. And I'm sure you heard of that. And that was the legacy, right? The Mamba mentality was how he approached the game, how he approached life, how he, hustles his way out, how he had a torn Achilles, walked on the court, shoot that free throw. Even I'm getting goosebumps right now. Shoot that free throw in a torn Achilles, right? How he had a dislocated finger, pop it back in and go back. That is the game. That is a game that he was playing. It wasn't for the championship. It was showing up. And to me, that was such an important message, because I know that when I passed on, it's not about ADP, it's not about how many users or how much money we make, but it's how did I approach life. I was born with this set of things in Singapore. I was born into this family. How did I approach life?
Felix, you are very, very good at things like marketing, and I can imagine that would be very helpful to all designers and even all of our consultants, honestly. So what are your thoughts on just being effective at LinkedIn? And that might be effective though, like wearing that thing.
Yeah.
LinkedIn, and do you suggest people should start their own newsletters?
Wow. Personal branding is important. I mean, it's going to be the age of creator first business moving forward. And if you want to get freelance or business or whatever, it is going to be super important. And truth of the matter is that content helps to amplify your brand. But content is not brand. I just want to make sure that that's clear, because there's many people who are content creators and you don't know what the hell they stand for. You're like, they're just good at creating content, they're just good at putting videos, but I don't know what they're all about, right? Like, you have designers who put out like designer contents, but the problem is that they don't know what they're designing for, right? They don't know, they don't even have experience. Some of them are maybe 4 years of experience. So it's a little bit of a, I would say, weird situation when someone creates.
It's a fame for fame's sake.
It's a fame, fame for fame's sake. So I don't support that. But if you know what you stand for, then you can create content around those. And I think that is encouraged for everyone. Yeah.
You are very good with approaching people. What do you do?
So first of all, I'm an introvert.
Me too.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people can tell, because sometimes we go out to many events as for our own company. But being an introvert myself, I tell you that the most important thing is to know who to connect with rather than how many people you connect with or talk to, right? When I go to events, I specifically know who I want to talk to, and I just go and talk to them, and that's it, right? Obviously, we can say that there are some other connections here and there. It happens, great, but having a focus is important. And so I would say going up to people, whether it be online or offline, making sure that you can always give value first. And sometimes giving value, and in fact most times giving value, is as simple as asking a very good question, because people crave good questions. People want good questions and say, hey, it's more than just I needed a job, can you help me? That's not a question, right?
That's a demand.
Yeah, that's a demand, right? Like on ADPList, we get some of those people are like that. But then if someone comes up to you and said, hey, I have this strategy I've been thinking about, I would love to hear your perspective on it, I'd love to hear your story of how you crafted your strategy. Like, these are good questions where it gets people thinking about themselves as well, and they can share with you. And so I feel like the number one value you can give people is to ask good questions. And I think
it's value to them because it offers them the opportunity to show or share expertise.
Exactly.
And tell their piece of the story. Because I also give this advice to my mentees. Literally the same thing. Ask questions.
Yeah.
And make the other person feel important.
Yeah. And I love it when they ask questions, and when you ask them back questions, or when you answer it, they write down. They either show you that you're writing down, or they write it down somewhere. It shows that they're listening and they care to put it down on paper, because they come on, like, not everyone is good at memorizing. In fact, most people don't memorize things at all. And so when they write it down, it gives you a sense that they really care. And I can say that, one, as a CEO myself, when my employees does it and my team does it, or second, like when my mentees does it. That's important. Yeah.
What makes a good or bad mentor on ADPList?
Well, so I'll start from the good one. A good mentor on ADPList is someone who doesn't just talk. Is someone who clarifies. Is someone who asks questions back to get more context. To someone who guides them and not just give answers, right? There's a lot of people who sort of want to just give answers only, right? You just kind of like, hey, I have a question to this, and then they just keeps talking, right? Oh, sorry, that's a bad one. But the good ones are the ones who doesn't keep talking. That the good ones are the ones who guide you, right? They ask you back questions like, hey, how do you feel about this? You ask them back, you say, oh, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? You get them talking. So those are what good mentors does, right? And good mentors, last but not least, always follow up. Now, obviously, you don't expect everyone to follow up, but whenever they have the time, they would follow up. Those are the good ones. They'll check in, hey, how are you, or whatever. Now, the bad ones, at least on ADPs I've seen, are the ones that, like I say, just one trait. They just keeps talking about their own value and their own things and whatnot, instead of asking a question back. So that's what we have observed. Yeah.
It's more of like a coaching mentality and understanding the context behind the person's challenges.
Exactly.
And how about for the students or the mentees? It can become like an extractive situation where only the student gets something out of it.
Yeah.
Possibly, right? What would make an ideal student that can also provide value to the mentor?
I think an ideal student, keep it simple, are students who ask good questions back again. Because when you ask good questions and when you come in prepared, people are much more receptive to hear your questions, and they also feel like you value their time and they are here. They know exactly what to tell you, how to guide you, and whatever. So when you come in prepared and ask good questions, that is super valuable.
All right, next question.
Let's go for it.
Do you do drugs or?
Or do I do drugs? That's a good.
Do you smoke weed or something?
Do I smoke weed?
Those are two questions.
If we have a weed. Two questions.
Those are two questions.
Do I do drugs? No. Do I do weed? I've done it.
You want to do it more?
Yeah, maybe do it a little bit more. But I think in Singapore, it's illegal, completely illegal, right?
Okay.
But if you do it overseas,
Like
it's
in
still
SF, right?
it's still illegal,
Okay.
by the way. So,
So don't do it.
don't do it if you're a Singaporean. But then, like, if you want to do it, just don't try to do it in the country or whatever. Just go out and do it. But then, yeah, you can try weed. It's like just try a little bit here and there. So yes, I do that when I was in San Francisco. I mean, how do I feel about it? I think it's okay. It gets you sort of floaty kind of a feeling, and that's it. I have done something a little bit more extreme than weed. I don't know if I can say it here, but
No, don't say it.
yeah,
Yeah.
you cannot say
Maybe
it.
later.
Yeah, maybe later. But that one, I'm not gonna say what, because it could be anything. It could be a fruit, right? That experience was memorable. Let's just put it that way, because it was trippy, but I think it allows you to think in perspective. And so I done it once. I don't think I'm doing it again because it was a scary experience, but it was
Okay.
good. Yeah.
We'll get people guessing
Yeah.
what the hell that is.
Yeah. You all can guess.
Yeah,
you all
yeah,
can
yeah.
guess in the comments or whatever. And, yeah.
All right. You started ADPList first off with designers, because obviously you are one.
Yep.
Right. What does it take to be like a top designer now?
I think, I first of all, I don't know if I'm a top designer because I'm a CEO now, so I can't claim that. I can't claim that fame. But thanks for saying that.
But you're always surrounded by
Yeah,
the best.
okay.
So.
Wow, I think a top designer, first of all, the one thing you must have is craft, right? You gotta have craft. Like, you gotta know what is good design. You gotta have taste. And this, my friend, is very hard to teach. A part of me wants to believe that it's born. A part of me wants to believe that it's nurtured. I think it's more nurturing. You get to evolve your taste. But not everyone can evolve as fast, right? So the people who evolve faster, they have a better taste earlier in their life. They excel quicker, right? So I think number one thing of a good designer that I've seen is having taste. Knowing what people want, what gets them attention, what gets people loving it. Like, that cannot be taught. Like, you cannot study Jacob Nielsen or Don Norman and say they teach you taste. No. But instinctively you know it. Like, people should know it. So that makes the top designers top. And the second thing I would say is that the best designers are very much stubborn because they know exactly what they want. They have a vision for it. But also, they are flexible. And this is a little bit of a contrary, and I know that, because they are stubborn on the vision of what they want, but they are flexible on the details. So if I want something, I want it like an iPhone, but then I can be flexible with a little bit of a detail here and there, and that's fine. But that's where I feel like the best designers are, because they know exactly what they want, but they are flexible on the details that could make or break things.
Because sometimes the strategy changes, or, well, you can have a good vision, but
Yep.
the way to get there can
Yeah.
differ depending
Can
on
differ.
new information.
It
right?
differs
Like,
every day, sometimes, yeah.
as a co-founder, that's what I found to be true.
Exactly, right? Yeah.
The context changes every day. Like, it's absolute
Every day.
chaos.
It's absolute chaos. It's a freaking World War III situation. You got people fighting and whatever, and like bombs thrown around. I mean, it's an absolute chaos. And that's exactly the main thing that I think, that we can take away from, which is that you should absolutely be stubborn about your goals and your vision. But then when it comes to details, you can be very flexible. Now, I'll give you a quick example. So last night, just literally last night, a few hours ago, we were launching a new category on ADPList. It's called soft skills, right? Where people can now not only reach out for things like design or whatever, but there's a category that literally says soft skills, and below it is communication, leadership, negotiation, whatever, so on and so forth. So
I've seen that.
yeah, like it's just yesterday. And so when we launched that, there's a lot of problems. But there's a small little problem. The goal is to put soft skills out there, right? So that leaders and seniors, people like us, can associate ourselves more besides just design or product, right? Because sometimes we don't want to talk about it. We want to talk about team building and whatever. And so that's a goal. Now, what went wrong was that the introduction model that says introducing soft skills was not working. It was not working on one of the pages. And there were some details that were off as well, like the red button wasn't working, so people didn't know it was new and whatnot. Now, I could have said, let's delay it until we, fix all this crap, right? But then I knew that launching it was more important because we were going to learn something rather than waiting for all these small little details. And I said, our goal is to launch it out there and get feedback. So let's launch it instead of waiting for all these things. Now, this comes back to the lesson, of that. It's a very startup way of doing things, but it really comes back to the lesson that, we should be very stubborn on the vision, but then you should know when exactly to be flexible of the details. Now, some people can be like, wait, Steve Jobs would have be so detailed about that one single button. I was like, yeah, right? But
it's like a low risk scenario.
Yeah, it's a low risk scenario.
Yeah.
Like, if one single red dot that indicates it's new is not there, do you think it's going to change the result of the experiment that we're running? No, it's not, right? And so I think designers tend to be sort of like saying, oh, what would Steve Jobs do? Right? Like, I don't care what would Steve do,
Yeah.
right? But the statistically proven, right? Like, it's statistically there that you can add one freaking pop-up there and versus the other pop-up that you've done, it's not going to make a difference. As long as you got a pop-up there, it's done, right? And so I think knowing what to sacrifice and knowing what to be flexible, very good designers know when to make that trade-off. Yeah.
Understanding the trade-off scenarios, what exactly is being tested,
Yeah.
what hypothesis being proved or disproven, and being flexible on the implementation. That's so important, especially if you're working with a product roadmap and you want to launch, you want to learn as fast as possible.
Oh.
And everything is about execution.
100%. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure your CEO tells you that every time. Launch it. And you yourself as well.
Yeah.
So
I always tell the team all the time.
that is the way that it is. Hopefully, startup folks listening to this or working in a startup can empathize with your founders a lot more when they say that. Yeah, because some people would think that that's an asshole thing to do, but it's like it's not. It's just how startup works.
It's not gonna affect, like, especially, we're not Uber level yet, or we're not Airbnb level yet. Like, no one's gonna care that much.
Yeah.
At worst, they're gonna send in like a feedback thing through email or whatever, customer support ticket.
That sounds bad. Yeah.
But at best, you got feedback. You got people caring about your product who took time off their day to,
tell you.
right? Like, that's a big deal.
It's a big deal. I mean, startups are like, there's this quote by the Coinbase founder, Brian Armstrong, and he says that, startups are like sharks, right? And sharks are always swimming. When they don't swim, they die, by the way. Great white sharks, right? And I think startups are really like great white sharks. If you don't swim, you die, right? So just keep swimming, just keep shipping. And the way that you swim, in this case, in a startup, is shipping things and learning. Yeah.
As a founder, and how much do you influence the day-to-day design and product work? Like, how do you manage that now?
So I set the product vision. I say that, hey, look, we got to go to this direction. I'll give you an example. So let's say I want to launch soft skills, right? I say, okay, my hypothesis as a founder and the strategy is that, we want to expand more into senior and leadership people. So they don't care so much about your Figma stuff and whatever.
Yeah.
They care more about how to team build, how to collaborate and stuff like that. And when I set that strategy, I say, okay, so here's our goal, here's our hypothesis. And the hypothesis is that, they only care about soft skills, right? They only care about all this team building and whatnot. They don't care about, the Figma, whatever kind of things. Now, the team, the designer, will then say, okay, why not? Here are the few things that we can do to test that hypothesis, right? And so they propose it. Sometimes I propose it. So it doesn't matter who proposes it as long as it's to the hypothesis and the strategy that is to the company. It doesn't matter who proposed that idea. We pick one. Usually I will have the final call because it's a 10 people team. So I'm the de facto product manager for now. So I say, okay, let's pick this and let's move on. And we then set a 2 weeks timeline to design and build that, right? And so usually this is the process. It's pretty fast.
One last thing for me
Yeah.
is what do you want to say to all of the founders, all of the possible design founders and design consultants and other types of founders listening to you right now?
What I would say is that the design that most designers would be thinking right now would not matter in a startup. And what I mean by this is that your whole long ass user research, your entire mind mapping, your entire flow chart, lo-fi, all these little things will not matter in a startup. You could go to the hi-fi, your engineers understand that, and you could just launch it and test it. Do you need research? Minimal. You need a hypothesis, a strong problem statement, but the solution should be very flexible and iterative. And most designers thinking about this is like, wow, I got to do this, I got to do that. I'll tell you no. You have to be able to say, I'm going to ditch a lot of these things and I'm just going to launch it. And designers who work too long in big tech companies especially will not be comfortable with this. Will be uncomfortable. But if you don't do that, then you're not a startup. You might as well go and work in the corporate. So that's my advice to designers who want to be in a startup or design founders, is that don't hang around too much with the design community. Hang out more with builders and people who launch things and ship things. Founders, right? If you go to Config, you're hanging out with a bunch of product designers, doesn't make sense. They won't understand where you are at. But if you go to a Y Combinator demo day, they would understand everything you're talking about. So hang on the right people.
That's huge. Like, don't go to Config APAC next time.
Yeah, God. I mean, I'm not saying don't go there, but then if you're a design founder, you should know where to go. You should know where you should be.
It's a shift. Like you have to rework who you talk to, because it's an entirely different mindset, a different set of skills.
Exactly.
To succeed. It's not about wireframes anymore.
Like if you Alexis, if you go to Config today versus if you go to Y Combinator demo day, because you're a founder, you would learn so much more at YC.
I didn't go to Config.
Which is why you didn't.
Just watch the summary.
Exactly, because you're like, why do I need to use this tool? Why do I need to hear about your whole design system? I am busy trying to find my market fit. I'm busy trying to scale up. I don't need that. Perhaps at some point, I'm going to hire you to tell me.
It's not going to affect my P&L statement.
Yeah, it's not going to affect that.
Or me achieving my revenue goals or marketing goals.
And these conferences like this are not going to teach you how to build good experiences as well. Because you already know what a good experience is. I think a lot of people, they go there, they're like, oh, maybe there's something new. I was like, there's nothing new. You know what a good experience is. You know what good hospitality is. Design that. And so I think that's the key.
All right.
Yeah.
That's super great advice. I take that advice very seriously.
Yeah.
And I've applied it to my own life. It's required, by the way.
It's
if you want to do that.
Yeah. You have to.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alexis.
Felix, this is such a great session.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It's such a great pleasure to be here as well. Thanks,
All right.
Alexis.
Thank you.